Hey guys, it's Prince Rich with Rich Technology Group, and in today's video, we're going to do an in-depth review of the Yealink T46S IP phone. So again, that's the Yealink T46S IP phone. This is a pretty common phone. It's still a fairly new phone, but it's a pretty common phone that is typically on the discounted price or on the free included with service price for a lot of the major hosted voice over IP phone system providers. So let's jump right in and get into an in-depth review of this phone. So, notable features for the Yealink T46S are high resolution 4.3-inch color screen. One thing that really differentiates this phone is it is a 16-line capable IP phone. I know many of you that are watching this video are probably thinking, holy cow, 16 lines, that's a lot of lines. What am I even going to do with 16 lines? I can't say that I've sold this phone to any customers that actually are utilizing the full capacity of 16 lines. Some that are utilizing maybe 6 lines on a regular basis for their front desk receptionist, or even some that are going up as high as 10. But just so you know, like they say, sometimes more is better. It's better to have more than to have less of what you need. So it is a 16-line capable phone. That's a pretty cool feature. It is a gigabit Ethernet phone, so it does have gigabit ports on it. Meaning for those of you who are running a network with gigabit switches, gigabit router, believe it or not, there are still a bunch of IP phones out there, especially that we see in the Cisco realm, that only have 10100 ports. This is a gigabit phone, so if you've got gigabit, there you go. It is also PoE capable. So if you actually look at the data sheet here, got a little icon on their manufacturer's data sheet. It is a PoE capable phone. I know for those of you who are watching that, you may not have a lot of phones in the office. You may only have like 3 to 5 phones. That may not be a big deal. But for a lot of companies that we work with that say have, 20 employees or even upwards of like 80 to 100 plus employees, especially if you've got a lot of people crammed into one office or into one space, or you've got a cubicle set up, the ability for having power over Ethernet to be able to supply not only the data to your IP phone on the desk, but also electricity is a really big plus. So PoE capable there for those of you who are interested. The phone also has a pass-through port. Let's scroll down a little bit because they have a diagram here in this data sheet for this. And I've actually worked with this phone and seen this phone as well. It's a very nice phone. The picture really does tell no lies. It is a really nice phone with a nice color screen, nice keys that feel good on the fingers and whatnot. Here is a diagram here. So if you look at the diagram, it has here an actual internet port. This port right here for internet is where your actual incoming line would come from your switch or your router or wherever you've got the port on the wall or however you want to call it coming from the internet source for your office. A lot of people will tend to have the phone and then they've got a computer or whatever nearby, which is a typical office setup. So you can actually come in here on this phone into the internet port, come out of this internet port, come out from this PC port and go into your computer. So if you're somebody who's watching this that's interested in this phone and you're thinking, oh, I really want to switch to VoIP or really like the idea of IP phones, but we would have to spend a bunch of money and run wiring for the new phones and whatnot. This would actually allow, again, this pass-through as it's called, would allow for the ability to come in with that one Ethernet cable that you have supplying the existing internet and then come out here and go back to your computer that you would have at your desk, whether it's a computer or a laptop or whatnot. So that's pass-through port, which is a nice feature that not all voice over IP phones include, but this phone comes with that ability to be able to share internet to another line. This is a Bluetooth compatible phone, which is something that is also becoming more common, but it's still kind of a rarity with a lot of phones that we see. What would you typically use this for? This would be like if you wanted to use it for, a headset. I have one company that is an insurance company that has approximately about 6 of these phones. They love these phones. And the guy that purchased these for his staff and his corporation, he basically, I actually didn't know. He was the first company that we actually sold these phones to when they were kind of hot off the press, so to speak. And he actually came to me and said, "Hey, I found out that this phone had Bluetooth." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I picked up some really nice Plantronics wireless headsets for myself and for the staff from Amazon." And so he said that it actually worked out really great and had a good experience with it. So for those of you who are watching this that are saying, "Well, I need a desk phone. I like this. It's a desk phone, but I prefer hands-free." This phone is capable of being paired with a Bluetooth device. Obviously, in this case, like a Plantronics headset or something like that. So the reason I say Plantronics, by the way, for those of you watching this, there's plenty of headsets out there of different brands that are Bluetooth capable, but Plantronics, which I believe is owned by Polycom, and they're like, the masters, will say, of HD voice, of really high quality audio over phones. Plantronics, which is owned by Polycom, makes some of the best headsets out there, and they're actually priced pretty well. So for those of you looking for a good wireless option, we definitely recommend Plantronics. But again, Bluetooth capable, so you can purchase whatever you like and go from there. While we're on this subject, I want to point out something else that's another feature on this phone, which is becoming more common. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the old 3.5 millimeter and the 2.5 millimeter headset jack, like the type of jack that you would use for, typically 3.5 is what you would use for a phone, like an office phone, to be able to plug in, like, your stereotypical call center headset that's got the thing that goes over your head, and then it's got the mic piece that kind of comes out in front of your mouth, in front of your face. While I personally prefer those, a lot of people are kind of moving to the wireless things, or they kind of, moving to different types of things. But if you're somebody that's like me, that's old school, that still prefers the old, sit at the desk call center type headset, that's what this jack is for. The reason I want to point this out, this jack, which is the same type of jack. The reason I want to point this out is because in the past, it's always typically been a 3.5 or a 2.5 millimeter jack, again, like you would see on a cell phone or like you would see on the old school desk phones. More and more, I'm starting to see that it's turning into this, I call it a proprietary jack, but it's actually not proprietary. It's an RJ11 style jack, or it's a jack that's similar to the old, like, analog phones. So that's basically what that is. So just understand that I don't believe with this phone you can just turn around and plug in any old type of standard 3.5 millimeter, call center style type headset or anything like that. You have to get something that has this particular jack here. So just keep that in mind when you go shopping around for hands-free or headset options for this phone. So moving on. This is also a Wi-Fi compatible phone. Now, I want to be very clear here. A lot of people hear the word Wi-Fi and they think, "Oh, cool, I can grab the phone, I can purchase this phone, and then I can connect it to the wireless network that's already installed in my office." Wrong. It is Wi-Fi capable, but it is Wi-Fi capable with what is referred to as a WF40 YaLink compatible dongle. Basically, that dongle is a device that it's typically about this big, and it is a thing that connects into the back of the phone. It would connect to one of these jacks here into the back of the phone, and it is specifically designed for this phone. And then from that device will actually connect to your Wi-Fi in your office. Now, I don't want to dwell on the Wi-Fi too much, but there is one thing that I really want to point out really quick so that nobody gets, up creek without a paddle. Wi-Fi can be great for some IP phones. Like if you've got a particular setup in, let's say, an office where, you don't have a wire, but you've got Wi-Fi. There's a few things I want to mention. Number one, your Wi-Fi needs to be very reliable. Your voice over IP phone service, always, in every scenario, no matter what phone or what carrier you're using, is always as good as your network. So if you've got some really crappy or really spotty Wi-Fi in your office, or you don't get very many bars, like the signal's not great, like you're kind of far away from the access point of the router, I would really, really encourage you not to go wireless for your voice over IP phones. One other thing that I want to point out, while I think wireless on voice over IP phones such as this one and many other models we've seen in the field can work well, if you're somebody that is using, say, somewhere around like maybe 5 or more, I would say once you break that 5 extension, that 5 phone in the office mark, I do not recommend wireless. I recommend you invest the money if you don't have the wiring in your office and have somebody go ahead and run the proper wiring and put those phones on a hard line because it's more reliable. With phones on wireless, whether it's this phone, the Yealink T46S, or another Yealink, or even Cisco's or Polycom's, once you start to get into that 10 phone range and above, it's not so much about whether you have good wireless in the office or not. It becomes a traffic thing where just running that many IP phones over wireless connection with that much voice over IP traffic going back and forth, and that's before you add into the equation your computers on the network, your printers, any other wireless devices that users on your network might have, like cellular phones and things like that. You may run into some pretty serious traffic problems. So just be mindful of that with wireless. Wireless on this phone is excellent if you have the WF40 dongle for each individual phone. But again, I really don't recommend going wireless for people that have that have over 5 phones in the office. I recommend that you start looking at a wired option, wiring in the wall, so that you can, help balance that voice over IP traffic load a little better. So anyways, a few notable things that I want to get into about this phone. This phone has HD voice. For those of you who aren't familiar with what HD voice is, I believe that Polycom was the pioneers of the HD voice, we'll say, feature. There are some other companies now that have their own version of HD voice, which I guess we could say compares to Polycom, but the short version of it is with HD voice is, HD voice is excellent. I have a Polycom here in my office, and I also have a Yealink, not this Yealink, but I have a Yealink cordless. And HD voice, in my opinion, when I have my phone on speakerphone, it quite literally sounds like the person that I'm talking to is sitting in the room with me, especially on the Polycom and the Yealink desk phones that have the HD voice feature. The HD voice logo is this right here. It comes in different variants, but you can usually tell if a phone has HD voice because typically somewhere on the handset, Polycoms and the Yealinks alike, typically on the handset somewhere it has this little logo, which is like the HD voice logo. So that's a great feature for those of you who like to use speakerphone a lot, because phones such as the Yealink T46S that have HD voice and phones that don't, when you turn on speakerphone, you can tell the difference. There's a lot less echo. There's a lot less them sounding like they're, not on a cell phone or in a car or in an echoey setting or something like that, like a very open setting. It sounds like a very well filtered phone call that has them, sounding like they're very nearby you, and also very good noise reduction. Like you don't hear a lot of background noise and things like that. So HD voice is a good thing that this thing has. As we already talked about the Connect Any Bluetooth headset, the Bluetooth is a very noteworthy feature that I wanted to just make sure everybody understands. That's not a very common feature in most phones these days, but it is a feature that is included in the Yealink T46S IP phone. The PoE, again, as a recap, is a really good one. Again, for those of you watching who don't have a lot of people in the office, it may not be a very big feature that says, oh, now I got to go buy one. But that's a really good feature for people that have a lot of phones, because you've already got a lot of wiring as it is to accommodate for other devices in the office for your staff, such as computers, and they might have a desk printer. They might have like a label maker or something on their desk that's already taking up a bunch of sockets on the wall or on a surge protector or whatnot. So that's a really good feature as well. One other thing I wanted to throw out there as well about the PoE, about the Power over Ethernet feature is, if you have Power over Ethernet, for example, so just follow me here. This is a really good feature that this phone has that can not only save you money in having to have a bunch of like surge protectors and stuff or additional plugs, it can save you money down the road on equipment protection and assurance. If you've got a PoE device like this one where it has the port that allows you to just plug in straight from a PoE switch that has power coming to it, if you back up that PoE switch, which you'd in theory only have one switch in the office, whether it's a 16 port or a 24 port or a large 48 port, if you put power protection like a UPS or something, an uninterruptible power supply on the switch in the back office, and then you've got multiple wires on your switch going out to this phone, and that switch is protected, you've now protected all of those IP phones from an electrical surge or from a storm surge or brownouts or things like that. So that's a huge money saver if you're not having to buy those small like desktop UPSs for every single desk, for every single phone, if you can protect those phones at the switch level. So the PoE port, the power over Ethernet port and capability on this phone is a very noteworthy feature that I wanted to just bring back up on that point again. So anyways, cons of this phone. Cons of this phone, and I've actually messed around with this phone, and I've also sold this phone to a lot of businesses, for Vonage Business and for Nextiva. The cons of this phone, there's not many, but one that is pretty noteworthy that I personally felt was the physical feel of the phone. Don't get me wrong. It is a sturdy phone. It's a solid built phone, but the physical feel of this phone, I don't want to say it feels cheap, but it doesn't feel as solid as like your more expensive Polycoms or your more expensive Ciscos. I'm not knocking the phone at all, because if Vonage Business or Nextiva or one of those guys was to call me up and say, hey, Prince, do you want a free Yealink T46S? I wouldn't turn that down at all. I would take the phone in a heartbeat. It's an excellent phone. For me, the color screen and the 16-line capability is a win-win for me. But I won't sit here and lie. In comparison to, say, the Polycom VVX 250 series and the Polycom VVX 200 series phones and the 400 series phones, you can tell when you pick up the handset on both phones and you kind of rest your hands on each one. The Polycoms or some other higher end phones that cost more tend to feel a bit more sturdier. So that is a noteworthy thing. I've never had anybody call me and say that the phone broke or anything like that, but you can tell when you use the phone, if you're somebody who's worked in call centers or worked in offices a lot and you've used some of the other higher end phones, you can tell that the phone has a kind of a cheaper feel to it, like a less sturdy feel than some of the higher end, more solid phones, if that makes any sense. So let's see here. Another con is for those of you who are not interested in a wireless headset, me personally, I don't like wireless headsets, and I don't like the whole feeling like I have something in my ear. I like the headsets that kind of just rest on your head and have like a metal bracket or whatever that goes over the top of the head, and they kind of sit and then sit on your ears like this. I prefer those types of headsets. I don't like having anything in my ear, especially not for hours of the day. It just doesn't feel natural. It feels awkward to me. For those of you who, like me, would not go with the wireless headsets that go inside of your ear and you want the old school headset, unfortunately, I don't believe that you can use a 3.5 millimeter headset jack or 2.5 millimeter headset jack with this phone. You have to go with one of these weird dealios here, which is like an RJ11 style type jack. The issue there is not that you can't find something like that. It's just your options for a headset jack like that, like a traditional call center headset is what I like to call them. Your options drop significantly for a headset like that, for a phone like this. When you go and you look for ones that are just like 3.5 millimeter, I mean, the options are endless and the prices are all over the place, everywhere from $6 to, $60 or $150, depending on, what suits your need and how low end or high end you may be. When you're looking at a jack like this one here, the options, they shorten dramatically on places like Amazon and VoIP Supply and things like that when you go and look for that. So that's really one of the only other cons that I could think of as far as that is concerned. One other, let's see here. I wanted to give a couple of customer examples of some folks that, it was not really a customer example, but it was a customer example of somebody that had the phone that ran into a con. I don't know how legit it was, but I just wanted to throw it out there for those of you who want a bias, you want a non-biased review of the phone. Again, I personally like the phone, but I'm just going to give it to you real on what I've seen in the field for installations that we've done nationwide in the U.S. And whatnot, and for people that we've had purchased the phone through a carrier through us. I had one customer that is a sign company, and it's actually a large franchise that's a sign company, and he purchased the system for a couple of locations. And installation went fine. That wasn't the issue. No issues with the phones, no duds or anything like that, or any like programming issues. But he contacted me about a month later and said that he was having a strange issue where the phone sounded very muffly. Even when I talked to him on it, I couldn't hear it on my end, but he sounded like I sounded like he said it sounded like that I was very muffly, like almost the sound that you get if you talk to yourself and you cover your ears like so or something like that and talk. That's the way that he described it to me in exactly his words, what it sounded like. He used the words quote unquote like somebody was underwater or something like that. I contacted Vonage Business, who was the carrier that he had gotten the phones from, on a free promotion, actually. He didn't pay anything for the phones. He got them included at no extra cost with his agreement. And one of the technical engineers said, that sounds like something that needs to be changed in his router that's hurting his voice protocol or something like that. Because the tech asked me, is it happening on one phone or is it happening on multiple phones? And the guy said that it was happening on all the phones, which tells me right there, he had like 8 phones in his office. Let's be real. The chances of 8 phones having the same problem that occurs on the same week is really, really, really unlikely for that to be an issue with the phones. That's probably something that's network related or service provider related. All I know is that Vonage Business had somebody at high-level tech support reach out to him. I contacted him back about 4 days later just to check in by email, just saying, hey, as a courtesy, I wanted to see if you ever got that resolved. And he said, yeah, somebody at Vonage, they contacted me, they logged into my network remotely, and they made some changes and the problem stopped. So that's the only thing I could think of. But he had mentioned that it was happening on the phones and was saying, oh, I hate these phones and this and that, but it got resolved and he liked it and he never switched the phones or asked to have them replaced. So anyways, let's get into the price of the phone. This phone on average, if you purchase it from online sources, on average, it averages about $125 to $150 from what we've seen. That's an excellent price for this phone, considering I sell phones all day through the carriers, with agreements, and I see phones go from anywhere from, I would say the average pricing on phones, depending on what you're looking at, without promotions or discounts from the carrier, or, like if you go into this contract, we'll give you the phone for free or reduced price. At regular, phones usually go anywhere from, I would say, about $80 to as high as about like $250 to $260 for really good IP phones for VoIP systems. So that's actually a pretty good price. While we're on the subject, I just want to say there's a couple of things about price here. If you're shopping online with Amazon and you see a price, or eBay or whatever, and you see a price that looks too good to be true for this phone, especially this phone in particular, for the research that I've done, if you see something that's significantly lower than like $125, you need to really look at the description, because I've seen a lot of people selling this phone for prices like $70 to $80 to $90 something dollars, but there's a catch. It has no power supply in it. Now, for those of you that are running PoE in your office, power over Ethernet on your switches or router or whatever, that's probably not a big deal to you. It might be worth the price if it's brand new and it doesn't have an adapter, a power adapter to plug into the wall included. But I mean, a lot of people that I work with, the average customer that I work with doesn't have power over Ethernet in the office. And a power over Ethernet router or switch is not cheap. I mean, a switch could easily cost you $150 to upwards of $300, depending on the size of switch that you need. And a power over Ethernet router at minimum is typically going to run you at least $120 to $150 for a good one that's going to work well with voice over IP. So I would caution any of you that are looking for this phone to, if you see a price that's lower than what I mentioned about the internet average is, about $125 to $150, if you see something that's a lot lower than that, I would really encourage you to contact the person that's selling that and just ask them, what's wrong with it? Is this used? Is there some cosmetic damage? Is the power supply included? Is the handset included? I know some of you are probably laughing, but you'd be surprised at some of the things that I've seen. The good news is, for those of you who are watching that already have a voice over IP phone system provider, you're obviously not looking for a new carrier. Below this video, I've included a link on Amazon directly to this phone where you can buy a source on Amazon that I have approved, is brand new, has all of the accessories, it includes the power supply, and it's a reliable source on Amazon that you can get it from and whatnot. For those of you who are watching this and don't have a hosted voice over IP provider, and you're thinking, well, maybe this phone is a good move, most of the carriers, especially if you contact me, I can typically get you these phones for free. Whether you've got need just two phones in the office or need 200, I can typically get you this particular phone for free with an agreement with the service provider. So again, that's the review of the Yealink T46S. For those of you who are watching, if you've got any questions about this phone, feel free to ask away in the comments below. For those of you who already have this phone, tell us in the comments below what you think about this phone and why you like the phone or why you hate the phone. So again, Prince Rich with Rich Technology Group. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do videos like this every single week. And of course, if you're looking for phone or internet service for your business, I'm your guy. Reach out and let me know how I can help you out.